point is, in the history of, I want to say like land Latin America, not the islands,
Okay.
there have been very bad things that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like incredible things that seem dystopian. Like we're talking on the
Mm-hmm.
level of V for Vendetta,
Mm-hmm.
where the government controls everything and they're literally rounding people up and they're hanging people in soccer stadiums. Like this is very. And so after having lived in Argentina, there were
Mm-hmm.
two things I really got from that experience that will always stick with me. One was the financial side, right? And we can talk about that and like the devaluation of the peso, which continues today. But the other was that people's very knee jerk reaction to any government overreach or
Yep.
any time the government had too much information or control over them
Mm-hmm.
because of what happened in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s with their dictatorships and like crazy stuff,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's where, and for everyone joining us, we are talking about privacy rights, data and privacy rights.
Data
And also,
privacy.
I think just talking on a larger thing about government and its role in society and how that
Mm-hmm.
plays and, how societies have, societies can have societal levels of PTSD, you know?
Sure.
We
Sure.
actually have that deeply in the United States, I feel, my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to gun culture.
Oh
And
my gosh.
we
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
just so shell shocked now that we see shell shock was the word they used in World War II to say
Mm-hmm.
PTSD before they had PTSD. Like this was in the long line of how we just create new words to describe our feelings. And we are now just so desensitized to school
Mm-hmm.
shootings and mass shootings that it will come on the news and it's just like, oh, there was a car accident on the highway, right? And then
Yeah.
I come down to anywhere you leave the United States, you just even go to Canada where Aussie is, and you try to explain this to people, and
Yeah.
they're like, that doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense. Oh, and there's George Pate. What up? What up? What up? All the way from zesty Tejas.
Tejas? I like Tejas. We're going to Tejas, aren't we?
We are going to Tejas, and I'll
Oh
pass the
yeah.
mic now because I've been talking a lot. But anyways, I actually have to shut a door, so
Oh, go
continue.
shut a door. I
Yeah,
think
of course he's got to shut a door.
I think I can hear if a country I can hear if a country
Are you echoing yourself right now, Grant?
I sorry, I had LinkedIn over here and I was like, who's talking to me? Oh, it's these
Grant
guys.
is actually he's about to put on the auto tune. Like
Yeah.
he'll be like T-Pain Nadu.
I mean, I know countries have these traumas, and I'm not blind to it. I still don't think it's a privileged conversation to say I don't care about data privacy because even when you think about, more often than not, when we're talking about data privacy, we might be talking about governments tangentially, and that is the slippery slope of that. But usually we're talking about private companies, and then I think about human nature and I go, for especially in my time in crypto, the core tenets being decentralization, meaning I don't want anyone in charge, and anonymity. I don't want anyone to know what's going on. Tristan, how your teeth so white?
They're not that white. I'm just wearing black all the time. That's all.
That's probably true. But anyways, when I think about that, I think, listen, the masses, I don't think about the authoritarians. I don't think about the Zuckerbergs. I don't think about the BlackRocks. I think about the very person complaining about anonymity or privacy or decentralization. When push comes to shove, if they could have any convenience at all, they would give those things up. And that's how people vote. That's how people act. And so like if there were real Web3 decentralized degens, they wouldn't even use Restream. They wouldn't go live. They would live an integrated life and going, I just don't want any centralized authority having my data. But if I have a credit card, they already know everything they need to know. If you use a Visa card. And so when I think about privacy, I don't think we should go willy-nilly. I think we should watch the laws. But I don't think it's privileged to count the zero-sum game and go, okay, there's no way I can fight that. There's no way I can fight that, so why do I not benefit in my life as an opportunist from using it as much as I'm allowed to use it? And that's kind of
Yeah,
Wild.
that makes sense. And I hope Aussie enjoys our little TEDx we're going to have today on privacy because he looks quasi interested.
Half asleep.
Yeah, I
No,
think we're ready for AI
I'm
Aussie
half
today.
asleep in my life right now. Okay, I'm actually interested in this debate about privacy, because it's definitely. Uh,
Jesus
I
Christ.
don't even know. I know. I was just reading that. And I'm
Aussie,
like,
you're up. You need to respond to this, and then I'll continue with the
Yeah,
privacy debate.
Aussie, you respond to that.
Aussie,
okay, do you know what? Let's do it. We
Let's
use
do
Midjourney.
that's
Use Midjourney, generate a butt ton of NFTs, sell them as exclusive tickets to watch Elon Musk fight Zuckerberg, streamed on Not Crypto Bros.
have, have you guys seen the meme going around of this where it's like twist ending? It's a meme of like Elon putting Zuck in an armbar, and it says twist ending, and it's Tom from MySpace throwing like a flying elbow.
We could even make a special. You know what? That could be like a special one of one NFT.
We should, and just like print like 1,000 of them, sell them for $100 each. It's on.
Oh, dude.
I mean,
You're speaking right facts right there.
Yeah.
Tristan, you just derailed a good conversation. Thanks.
And it's
because this is
here's
actually
the
a
proof.
decent idea.
Here's the proof that we don't care about privacy. Someone mentions meme culture, and we just pivot entirely.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Aussie and I are led by our fearless CDO. Okay, right. So that's how that works. But getting back to the privacy thing,
Yeah.
I find it, and this goes to the genesis, and maybe it's kind of this conversation, which started a little bit off mic for everyone. Grant was saying that somebody who he ran into in Lakeland was basically saying, "Oh, big institutions, they're taking over the world, they're bullying." And
Yeah.
I've always found it very interesting that I'll have conversation, or whenever someone says, and they start to complain about, "Oh, well, the banks run us, or the institutions run us, or whatever." I'm always like, okay, so how are you getting out of the matrix?
That's
Because
right.
you're wearing a Gucci
Blaming.
hat
That's right.
and you think you're cooler because you have a Mercedes than a Corolla. So like what you're also in a matrix, and apparently you don't see that. And that's the point of the matrix, that you can't see, touch, smell it, or even know that you're there. And unless you're literally living off the land, have zero, anything on the internet, no one can find you, I really don't want to hear about it. I really don't want to hear it. And Tristan says, that's my specialty, man. Tristan's somewhere. He just tuned in. He's like, I got nothing to do. Let me go derail these guys a little bit. But yeah, I think the NFT, I think we should drop an NFT, and maybe that's the first one we do. I will say, we always try to not be bros, crypto bros, but if that's our NFT,
You know what? We're not. That's not Crypto Bros. That's just funny. That's
meme lords. That's different than bros.
That is just absolutely memes. Has nothing to do with being a crypto bro. That's just thinking that Elon
you're
and
so
Zuck
in denial.
fighting.
You're so in denial. You're so
that
in
an
denial.
NFT is a broy thing to do? An Elon?
No, that this particular NFT isn't the most broy thing we could do for a show called Not Crypto Bros. Two billionaire dudes who just probably drink testosterone to make up for some, that are going to get in a cage match, and there's no chance. Also, let's get real with this. There's zero chance Elon will get destroyed. He'll get destroyed.
Wait, are you saying Zuck will win?
Dude, Zuck has been training. Okay, Zuck has been training martial arts for the last year and a half, which isn't a long time in real martial arts, but he's been going at it because he's nothing else to do, because he's a billionaire, and he'll just copy and paste the next thing. Elon is older, and Zuck, he did the Murphy, the Murph thing. He did that in 40 minutes, dude. That's fitness, my guy. That is freakish.
Yeah, but he's a skinny little white guy.
Well,
he would throw
MMA,
you around.
Skinny white guys can do it, and it's the sleepers in MMA. It is the sleepers in jiu-jitsu who are unexpected, and they're analytical thinkers. But downvote Jared. I was just gonna
I'm
say,
already downvoted. I'm at the bottom of the rung.
we
of
voted
3
him all the
people.
way down to Bogota.
Yes.
Like he's voted out of the United States.
They're just trying to get me below the equator. But wait a second, Grant. The good news is that we know who we're going to send to go fight because Aussie thinks he can beat up Zuck because he's a skinny white guy.
I'm not saying that I can beat up Zuck, but
Now,
I'm just
George-
saying he's a skinny white guy. Like,
George makes a point here, though. Like, I think if it were ground game, I'm gonna chill on my Joe Rogan. I think if it was the ground game, I definitely think Elon would take him. He's got 100 pounds on him easily.
He doesn't
yeah,
have
you
100
just need to
pounds
sit
on
on
him.
top of him.
But
As soon as he can get on, that was my entire strategy of beating my brother, who was about, even though he was 2 years younger than I was like at least
thing.
my height, was pin him down. Just if you can sit on top of him and pin him down, then Elon's got it right there.
I am highly aware. I've never been more highly aware that Aussie has no idea how martial arts work. Never than before this moment.
because wrestling in the living room with your brothers is exactly
7 and 5 years old translates into the octagon.
Absolutely.
Dana White's like, you're hired.
I actually think if they do actually fight, we should give people should buy an NFT for like 0.001 soul. So it actually costs more for us to make. And then we just have Aussie do the commentary. It will be like when Snoop Dogg does the commentary on like the Serengeti and all the little meerkats pop up and then a lion comes by.
Oh my god.
When they did the Olympics, or they did dressage. You remember? Did you see the one with him and Kevin Hart commenting on dressage? Oh
Yes.
my god!
Yes. Well, that will be like
Absolutely.
Aussie. It will be Aussie, and he'll just be like, he
That's
has
right.
his arm.
I could do that. He'd be like, I did that to my brother once.
Yeah. Let me tell you about this one time, my brother. I had
Yeah,
25 pounds on him.
I do think to George's point here, if Zuck could actually keep a striking game going, he could actually wear Elon down because Elon will get tired. And you're right about fitness and the Murph. If Zuck can keep moving and stay out from underneath Elon, I think
You
Zuck.
act like Elon is the size of Jabba the Hutt. There's not that big of a difference between the weight. Hold on. I'm going to use this thing called Google and get you weights. Yeah, Grant, you look up
pulling it
Elon. I'll look up Zuck.
Yep.
Aussie,
Elon,
you
this
look up
is
your own weight
where-
when you were 12.
Elon,
Oh,
Elon
wow.
is 6'1". There's no chance he weighs 200 pounds. How much?
So
how much?
Mark,
Is,
well, see, I don't know. I don't think that this is new information.
no, I'm looking at June 23rd. I see Elon. It says it's 6'1" and reportedly between 185 and 200. That guy has put on weight. What is they saying about Zuck?
Zuck is around 155 pounds right now, but that's because he's been training like a beast and he's probably a lot more muscle.
True, but
I
know
take
these
Zuck.
guys
I
aren't
take
pros.
Zuck all day. I take Zuck
I know
all
these
day.
guys aren't pros, but that weight difference is a difference maker.
Oh, I'm wildly aware. I have 2 concussions in my life. One of them was because I went up a weight class in wrestling and a guy bounced my head off the mat. So and that was only 5 pounds. I know it wasn't Aussie's 25 pounds that he had over his little kid brother in in the living room.
You guys are fucking. Let's look at this. Elon's also 6 foot. Zuckerberg's like 5'7". It's like. It's. Like
I'm
you
so
can almost-
excited. I am so excited to make bets with you two about this because Zuck will destroy. Zuck will destroy.
I feel like Elon just needs
Only
to
if
put
he
his
wears
hand on Zuck's head and just hold him there. Like
So Tom Anderson from MySpace
Oh my god.
weighs
Dad.
78 kilos. So, like he's a contender. So George says skill, practice, and training works in crypto and in martial arts. Whales are heavy, but they can always be. He brought in whale.
See, George should come on screen and Aussie should leave because Aussie literally just said, "I feel like he could hold his head," and then like Zuck will just swing.
No, now I will say Zuck would outmaneuver a grapple. Zuck could wear him out. Zuck could keep striking and totally wear him out. But if Elon got a grip, I think he could literally just outweigh the guy and just like ground and pound.
I don't think so. Anyways, the good news is I'm really excited to make money off you two over this. I'm really excited. I've never
I'm
been more
very
excited.
excited to launch our special viewing NFT.
We can do our
Where
special
you
viewing NFT and have alternate endings, and we can have those alternate ending. And George brings it back to crypto. Whales do not control
George
the
and
market.
George are trying to
Wait, I want to let's
re-rail
touch
us.
on this real quick though, for realsies. You actually think, George Pate, and then let me hand the mic to the gentleman here, that whales are not market making? Jarrett,
Yeah.
Aussie, jump in on his.
I'm not really sure what he's trying to say here, because in March of 2022, was it March of 2022? March of 2021, that was when Elon literally said, I think it was on Twitter, he was like, oh, by the way, we're not taking Bitcoin anymore because of ESG concerns. And the thing crashed. So I don't know if I guess Elon's a whale, because at that point Tesla had bought $1.2 billion of Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know. That's a really good question. Aussie, what do you think?
Whales 100% control markets to at least some degree. If you
There's not even a question.
Look who's
100%.
not pulling punches now.
well,
Just like he did in the living room.
all right. If we think about liquidity pools on DEXs, 90% of them are AMM. So they auto calculate based off of how much you're selling or how much you're buying. And so if you're a whale and you're buying in high volumes, or if the liquidity is low, you can absolutely boost or tank a token's value on any particular decentralized exchange by just buying or selling as a whale.
Just
This is a
buying
really
gold.
good point. Yeah, Aussie, this is a really good point. And George Pate, Aussie's making this comment. He's part of a liquidity
Trading bot.
trading bot. Thank you. And so he's very, I think it's happened to you. I think Aussie, you've been taken by whales a couple times, both for the better and for the worse. I wonder if George is speaking specifically about Bitcoin, because it's almost like we need to specifically talk about one particular cryptocurrency.
That's true.
Because just saying whales do the market, it may not hold water, but like we do know that Ethereum, there's a lot of Ethereum that's held by like a certain amount of people, right? So I think if you're talking about Bitcoin, maybe that's the case. I'm not sure.
Even if you think Bitcoin, the amount of money that you need to move Bitcoin is surprisingly not a lot, because the amount of Bitcoin on exchange, even on centralized exchanges, is significantly lower than it ever has been.
Ooh, Tristan has a question for you.
On DEXs, and in a DEX scenario, yes.
What
in
is
the
this?
central?
What is
so
AMM?
Automatic market maker.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
So
On centralized exchanges for certain.
no, that's on DEXs. DEXs use automatic market makers, which means I don't need a buyer to sell. The liquidity pool absorbs whatever I'm selling, and it does a calculation to calculate what my price will be, like what price I'll get based off of how much of each token is in the liquidity pool.
And you're saying centralized exchanges don't do that?
No, you need a buyer and a seller at a given price to
I can understand a regulated market, but an unregulated field like crypto?
Yep. Yeah. They actually use market making. It truly requires a trading partner.
That makes sense. And if you think about Coinbase, just as an example, Grant, to kind of play little devil's advocate, because they're publicly traded, things have to be a little bit more
Kosher.
round around the edges, So
Interesting. I guess I thought liquidity pools reigned supreme in cryptocurrency in general, and that's why architecturally or infrastructurally, Tether and all of our stable coins made so much impact when they depegged, because liquidity pools made such a difference. I want to answer George's thing, but Aussie, you posed a question I think it's time for us to get into off camera before Jared even got here that I think it's worthwhile of us answering. So get ready with that. George says, ultimate goal for individual is to win according to your goals. I could not agree more. You may not have tens of millions, but that doesn't mean you can't make winning moves. This is huge. Yeah, I mean, I think all the time. I'm posted a thread, aka a tweet, recently, and it was, many of you are so busy trying to make $1 million, you never learned how to make 100,000. And like, I think people like thinking about the $1 million mark, especially as brokies, because it's they can't imagine how, therefore they are not tasked with the responsibility of figuring it out. They just think if they just throw themselves at the goal, they'll do it. But when you think about, no, go make $100,000, and it's like, well, I mean, I made 60, that's fine. You make 60, make 70, make 80, go make 100. But don't make it with your job. Go make it the way you think you're going to make $1 million. And it's like, I don't even know how to do that. And so a lot of people are thinking they want to make tens of millions, as George is saying here, but their goals, they haven't stopped to ask themselves, what even is my goal? I know that we're facing this, Marissa and I, right now. We made it to a point. We have surpassed milestones that we had set out to make for ourselves 5 and 6 years ago. But we haven't reassessed, well, what did we say we were going to do when we hit these milestones, and why are we doing them or not? Did we say we were going to move back to the Dominican Republic? Did we say we were going to shutter everything and take our winnings and go buy a place free and clear and go back to homesteading? What are we doing now, and why? And I just want to call out George's point. I totally agree. People need to realign with their goals. Let me pose this question real quick. Do you guys know your goals for your crypto investing?
Yes, but can you put the ultimate goals back up on the screen?
Yep.
Just because I want to, may not. Yeah, I do, and actually, I was discussing this yesterday with somebody. I don't know many people. I don't know. Let me rephrase this. Yes, I do know. I would like a tiny home in Vermont, and I want land in Colombia, also with a little tiny home. And I want both of them to be in the mountains, and I want water on the land. That for me is making it. And then have enough crypto that I don't have to think about the money game anymore, the rat race. That's it. That's it. I don't want, and I posted this on Twitter and I got pretty good engagement, but it was like, actually, I'll just bring up that tweet. I'll look for that tweet. Aussie, do you want to share yours?
Yeah. I mean, my goal with crypto is that I have, so that I can essentially have enough money that I'm not playing the money game anymore, and that I'm got a nice piece of land, probably. I'd want at least 160 acres with a net zero house and water, at least water infrastructure that I can do rainwater collection and some ponds, so that I can store water and have water potential irrigation, and basically be able to have my own self-sustaining homestead. That's my goal, and basically having crypto at least be a financial backer, so that the things that I cannot produce myself or may need repairs, I have the money to do, and that when I die, my kids don't have to be worrying about, oh, we've got to sell this so that dad can retire or whatever. So that's my goals with crypto. And I mean, what George has said is totally right. I mean, you don't need to have tens of millions. I mean, just buying, I mean, I buy $167 Canadian of Bitcoin every 2 weeks. And by doing that, that's a winning move. Even though it's not a tens of millions, it's not even $1,000. That $160 move that I make every 2 weeks is a winning move, no matter what. Yeah. And I don't even need to outmaneuver a whale. Because I know that that's a winning move, because no matter what, Bitcoin, in the end, the whales want Bitcoin to go up, and they want ETH to go up. And so I make that is a winning move, and I don't need tens of millions of dollars to do it.
That's good. That's good. Tristan says, Aussie, do you think even in decentralized exchanges, they are any parallels to the trade of leveraged financial instruments like in the TradFi markets?
Wait, Aussie, before you answer this, can you share George's next comment, Grant?
Yeah.
I just think we should read this out loud. Yeah. Portfolios and life gains are better measured by percent gains as opposed to a dollar figure, essentially, is what he's saying. I just kind of wanted to round that out before we move on. Sorry.
Oh yeah, because you get sucked into like ridiculous 42x your money, and it's like 42x your money. Jared and I have been exposed to some private equity conversations lately, and we were shocked because someone mentioned a percentage that these investors are expecting a return on. And we couldn't get our heads around it in our counter to this person. They were like, no, it's 8%. We'll say they're expecting at minimum an 8% a year over 10 years. And we couldn't get our heads. Do they expect us to pay 8% dividends out? And they're like, wait, what? Why would you, what? And like they're looking for maybe a 2 or 3x, which divided out over so many years ends up being about it between an 8 and 10% return annually. But when you think about how it's paid out, it's like, I would have thought if someone was throwing money into private equity, they were looking for a 10, 20, 30, 40x on their money. It's like, no, bro. Like, they're looking for maybe. Like, it's a win for them to look at a 2 or 3x. That's like, oh shit, I doubled or tripled my money. That's fantastic. But I think we've had skewed views in crypto spaces anyway, because we've seen so many moonshots in the early days, like crypto is special. Crypto is not fucking special as an investment. In the internet days, the early internet days, why was there an internet bubble? Because before the internet bubble, there were redonkulous returns. They were seeing huge, crazy returns, and they were thinking this could go on forever. And no, the market leveled off. You had institutions step in, and then the returns equalized to like normal rates of returns. And here's Tristan, 20x is a flipping unicorn. Absolutely. And so like I think 2x is above average. And so now that's interesting to hear. 2x is above average. And so when we think about what sort of to this all goes back to George Pate's point, you know what? Let's start looking at percentage of returns. Because if you start talking $1 million, but you've never made 10,000, you're talking stupid percent return. Just get started with where you're at on your goals, and try to do 1% better a day. You know, if you could do that, you're doing all right.
Yeah, and I think George Pate also said he had to bounce out to ship some miners. Bye, George. We'll see a little bit later.
Ship me
George,
some miners, George. We'll start mining.
ship them up to Aussie. I really like what George Tortorella has shared here. And when I look back at like my crypto gains, I went 25x in 2017.
Sure.
And then it crashed. And then it crashed down because I was deep in, I didn't really had a little Bitcoin, but I was deep in altcoins. And then they pulled back 99%. And then in this last
and you thought the party wasn't going to end.
Oh, for sure. You never do. That's the point, right? You never do. You're on that high. And then in this last one, my overall holdings only went up total. I had some 20x's, some 50x's, but I have a lot of bigger coins. It only went up 4 or 5x.
Sure.
Which is actually really conservative. If you sit on Twitter and you see people who literally have gone from $20 to 2.5 million in Pepe in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But that is the exception, not the rule. And I just think if you're even just getting a 4x every 4 years, right? If that's the cycling of the halving, my guy, that's easy math. Just stay there. Don't get greedy. The greedier I see people on Twitter, the more I see them get wrecked. The more you chase money, the more likely you're never going to get it. So George Tortorella, I mean, he's given the TED Talk today. He says, comparing percent is the equalizer, always a losing formula to comparing the totality of what others have in the bank and in life. Beautiful.
Yeah, this man's hitting levels
here.
This
is like absolutely just like, I feel like I'm in a philosophy class right now.
Well, if you spend any time with George, like I feel like George carried forward. I mean, I know he's not this old, so I'm not commenting on your age, George, but like you feel like a person who came through the Zen 60s. And I know that we're pretty close in age, so I'm not saying you're old, but you have that feel about you where it's just like, I hung out in Cambridge Square, I marched, and it's all good, man. It's all gravy, but he's still out here making moves, man. He's out there tearing it up. So when I hear this, I hear his voice here, man. Comparing's the equalizer. Like we were sitting in that bar across.
Oh yeah.
Always a losing formula. I totally agree, especially when that formula has to do with happiness. Happiness is just It's so important. And then, of course, Tristan cannot resist to counter just a little bit with crypto gains and cocaines. The party never. What the hell, bro?
Jesus.
What the
Bruh.
hell? Photos or it didn't
Jesus.
happen. Photos or it didn't happen. That
Yeah.
and George gives it a whopping thumbs up. So I want to circle this back if we could. Did we want to either tackle this question or Aussie, the question you asked about the life and death of centralized exchanges?
I think let's enter this conversation. We'll enter the centralized
Mhm.
death of centralized exchanges, and then we can talk about these parallels and how
Okay.
and where they might exist or where they might not.
All right.
So,
Pose your question to Jarrett.
so Jarrett,
Oh, here we
we've
go.
been seeing a lot of talk about Binance and even kind of the discussion about the death by 1,000 cuts of Binance.
Yeesh.
And then we've also seen Gemini reappear up in the conversation in the last week and a bit with their suing of DCG. With all of this conversation, and have you guys seen some of the news about Binance.us where Tether, Bitcoin, and ETH are all trading at an 8% discount on Binance.us?
No, I didn't see that. Oh my God.
So they're all like all of those things. We're kind of seeing major exchanges. Gemini's maybe not as major, but was considered an important player at the same time. Do we see centralized exchanges making it to this bull market? Because it seems, or do we think they're dead? Do we think centralized exchanges, in all senses of the word, are dead? At least in their current iteration, like the ones that we currently have, are they dead? Are they gone?
Grant, you want me to take this or?
Well, I'll give my summarize because I answered it offline a little earlier to Aussie, but my summary was yes, absolutely. Coinbase being an exception because Coinbase has so much else going on. I don't just mean its exchange, I mean its venture arm. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And it operates and functions, though technically an exchange. It's really like the pet onboarding tool, and I think the government will allow it to keep in place. But in general, my answer is you know what? Yeah, I think centralized exchanges are the death toll bell is tolling, and I think it's just a matter of time that they become the Walking Dead. But what do you got?
Can you give me a timeline on that? You know, from now
He
to
says
Walking
before the
Dead?
full run. Aussie says before the full run, the bull run.
Yeah, before
no,
like
no,
the
but-
full bull run, before the top of this bull market.
Okay.
So January, like December 2025, top of the market. Before then, they're dead.
Grant, what's your timeline? Similar?
No, I don't think it'll happen before the bull run. I think because I think this bull run will not be sudden. It won't be like nothing and then all at once, like we often say. I think this will be what we're calling in the TradFi market a melt up. And here's Brian, our man. Here we go. BlackRock company and institutional money won't be using DEXs anytime soon. I think DEXs are going the way of the dodo.
I don't think Dex. So I disagree. Sexes are disappearing. Dexes aren't. But I don't think BlackRock and Co. institutional money will be using centralized. I mean, they won't be using most centralized exchanges either. They're using Coinbase. They're only using Coinbase.
They're getting wholesale from Coinbase, which is
Yeah.
why I think this is what I'm talking about, where Coinbase will have a special place in society. In fact, I own Coinbase stock, so I have to say that transparently. So when I say something positive about it, I do own Coinbase stock, but I only say that to say I'm betting that Coinbase actually, even though it's in this SEC bullshit, it has a functional architectural role, infrastructural role for BlackRock and company because of this right here. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll just jump in quickly.
Yeah.
The reason why I think Coinbase, so there's two things. It's listed in every single one of the ETF applications as the surveillance partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying they're going to be using DEXs. They're just using Coinbase.
Mm-hmm.
And Coinbase, and it's too bad George Pate is gone, but I think Coinbase does have at least some venture capital into mining and connections with miners, so they can be the bridge between miners and BlackRock, and that's essentially what BlackRock needs. They need a go-between. And so Coinbase probably won't be really much use for us. They'll be a market maker and a middleman between BlackRock and friends and miners.
Well, and I'm calling it the wholesale partner because BlackRock and institutional money is looking for how to get wholesale. That's what they're always looking for. And there's so in TradFi, there's so many instruments that are approximate or synthetic wholesale. We don't have that yet. We will quickly. And I think that Coinbase is serving that role. I do think DEXs will not become extinct. I think they'll become the GeoCities for OGs. People like us, how do we still have self-custody? People like us who have been around for a minute, how will we exchange for obscure altcoins and shitcoins? How will we perform all the transactions we're used to? I think we will continue to go to several swaps, like Sunday Swap for Cardano ADA. They have a whole DEX there that you can do a bunch of liquidity farming and stuff like that. Great. I'll still use all of that because I'm going to get just a little bit better than my money in a savings account or money in a CD. And I know how to do that. But the average retail trader, I think volume-wise, you're going to see an absolute dip. I think liquidity pools, you're going to see really struggle, and you're going to see the instruments change. But centralized exchanges, I think there's a coordinated move in America and maybe other places in the West to make sure that Coinbase is the only doorway and threshold for institutional money. Go ahead, Jared.
So this is a really good conversation, Aussie, and thank you for bringing this one up because I think Coinbase isn't going anywhere. So that kind of tanks Aussie's idea of centralized exchanges disappearing strictly just because they have BlackRock. You know, BlackRock owns like what, 30 to 40% of their stock, right? Like they're not going anywhere. And BlackRock, like that's a hand in glove relationship at this point. So I don't really see that going away. And then I also think it's going to be really interesting how we define centralized exchanges, because one of the things I said on Sean Clark's Good Day Crypto, Sean, shout out Good Day Crypto channel on YouTube. Everyone should check that out. Was I just quoted Grant, and Grant is always talking about everything's just going to get sucked up into its own thing because like Fidelity and Bank of America and Chase and Wells Fargo, they're all going to offer crypto if they don't already. Fidelity already does. If they don't already, to people in the next 24 months. And those to me will be centralized exchanges, right? So they're not the way that we've had them in the past with these brands like Binance, Gemini, and Coinbase, which 95% of the population has no idea that they exist. I just think that they're going to turn into that. And that to me is still a centralized exchange. I think you're always going to need a way to do KYC and AML if you're playing ball in the United States. And the United States wants that obviously to be the banks. They want to get their fees. That's how the TradFi system like limps forward, right? That's how they get a little bit more extra time on the clock. But I definitely don't see Coinbase going away. And I do agree with Grant on the DEXs, but I will disagree slightly and just say that I don't think they're going to turn into the GeoCities, because the DEXs is where shitcoins lives. It's where meme coins lives. It's where greed lives, honestly. Like a lot of those projects are, a lot of the liquidity there. And Aussie, please check me on this. But it feels like a lot of that is just, it's pretty ephemeral stuff. That's where you're going to go to just kind of like swap in and swap out as you chase a high. But like, does it have long-term value? I don't really know. But I do think in the next bull run, just like in 2017, just like in 2021, in 2025, there's going to be a lot of greed. More people are going to come in. We're going to double, if not triple, the amount of people that are in crypto now. So in crypto now, there's like 150 to 250 million, more or less, let's say. We're going to get close to 750 to 500 million to 750. People have said it will probably crack $1 billion by 2030, which makes sense after the next run that will happen in 2029, right? With the halving in 2028 and the next QE cycle, right? The next we have to pay off our own debt by printing more money cycle that Raoul Pal talks about. So in those cycles, I do believe that there's still going to be a place for DEXs. Whether it's a GeoCities, I'm not really sure. I'm maybe pushing back on that a little bit more. I think it's still going to hold, but I definitely don't think centralized exchanges are going away as long as governments like the US want to control who's basically putting money on exchanges. And the last thing is, if you have any money on Binance, you need to get it off immediately. that thing has just been going downhill. There's been things every month since about January that have not been good press. And now the fact that you can't on-ramp or off-ramp USD like dollars in the United States for Binance.us. If you have crypto on Binance.us, you need to get it off. Put it on a trust wallet, transfer it to another exchange, Coinbase, because I don't think it's going away, or or a cold storage. You need to do that. You've heard that 1,000 times. We all say that, but that is something that you need to do. So anyways, I do. And now my question for you two is, what do you guys think about Binance? I don't think Binance US makes it through the year. I mean, they have a lot
Through the
of issues.
year.
If they're selling that crypto at a discount, that is just such a red
I just
flag.
looked that up and I couldn't verify that.
It's not that they're selling it at a discount. It was trading at a discount.
Yeah, I mean, they're not selling it anymore. You'd have to move USDC from Coinbase to Binance and then take advantage of that arbitrage opportunity, essentially, right? But I guess you'd have to get on Binance and get on Coinbase and then just look at the difference between Bitcoin and look at the difference between Ethereum. That's probably the best way to see it. But for me, I don't think Binance.us makes it out of this year. I think they're going to have a serious issue.
Well, okay, I might take you on that. I mean, CZ has proven to be, I won't say spiteful, but pertinent, and surprisingly so. I believe he's Chinese by citizenship, correct? CZ Chengpao?
He's Canadian, isn't he?
Oh,
He's
a Canadian. He's a Canadian Chinese citizen.
Yeah, I think he was raised in Canada. He may have Chinese background.
He shows a type of resistance. Almost. Go ahead.
He was born in China.
But I'm pretty sure he's a Canadian citizen.
But he immigrated to Vancouver when he was 12.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was going to say he shows almost a Westerner's level of damn man, resistance, bravado. Thank you. And so from that regard, if he is, I'll say this: if Binance.us is around at the end of the year, I think it's simply by will and bravado alone. But for all intents and purposes, and from all traditional analytics, they probably should be gone by the end of the year. It's not, the cost benefit analysis is not there, other than simply making a point. I think when the dust settles years from now, we will, in hindsight, quickly see rumors and conspiracy in hindsight that Coinbase, Vanguard, its top holder is Vanguard, and it's glaringly obvious in omission on why Vanguard does not have an ETF, because it is the elephant in the room even over BlackRock. Second to that is ARK Investments, and we know Cathie Woods. I believe that there is a concerted effort, if not by intent and conspiracy ahead of time, but by allowance later, that the SEC battle with Coinbase, if nothing more, is them in unspoken agreement that they are in cahoots, that they will be the doorway and portal into crypto when the dust settles, and all other comers will be destroyed in the process, because they're so intimidated look at Coinbase. They're the big brother, and look at how the SEC is handling them, and everyone gets quivers in the knees and bails. And they're hoping CZ bails with Binance.us. FTX collapsed and is trying to come back. There's no way they're coming back. Gemini is quavering. And I think that some of it, in hindsight, we'll hear stories and rumor that they coordinated this effort to shake their competitors and be the absolute powerhouse in the room. If you look at their shareholders, that is a world financial, what is it? What is the World Financial Group? The World Forum.
The World Economic Forum. The WEF, yeah.
That is like literally their board. If you just read the top 20, you're like, they're embedded. They're an embedded institution.
Yeah, yeah. So to round the conversation, I do think Coinbase is going to be around. I think Aussie agrees with that too. That
Oh
Coinbase
yeah.
is going to be around, but maybe the idea of what we think of now as a centralized exchange, that idea is going to have to evolve. I think because when
Yes.
banks have it, when Bank of America offers basically the big three, what I would call, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and USDC. Those are the ones that tend to be like the first thing, the first in the door. Um, then we have to redefine what a centralized exchange is, right? Because if Coinbase is the only
Yeah, so I
dog
don't
left,
consider them centralized exchanges. Those are just your brokers. They become it just falls into the definition of a broker. They're
I think
not.
that's what Jared's saying. I think that's what Jared's saying. We're gonna have to
but
look
that's
at
what I'm
them.
saying. We're going to have
Yeah,
to evolve our thinking because right now you would say Coinbase, you put it in the bucket of a SEX, right? A centralized
yeah.
exchange. Um, so the Binance thing is fascinating to me, and I don't see there's this. Okay, this is the reason why I don't think they make it to the end of the year, is because some of the allegations that are put against them are basically that they helped, Russian oligarchs. And if you're oligarchs, then you are essentially tied directly to Putin. There's no way you make money on that level in Russia without Putin say so. There's some things that Binance did to basically allow people to move money. And that is such a no-no for the US government right now. If you help Russia, especially after the US had put sanctions, I don't see it going well for them. And I think the pressure is going to continue to come. And as people are taking their money out of Binance.us, I just think it's, as Aussie started this little section off, I think it's a death of a thousand cuts. So
Yeah. And I like the fact that you call them a broker. We should start. I was using the term wholesale, but samesies. But broker does make sense because it's not only wholesale offerings that are offering these institutions. While we were talking, and you mentioned the connection between Coinbase backing a bunch of miners and becoming a bridge towards mining and offering first right of refusal to the mining results to their institutional companies. And yeah, they do represent at least a handful that I could find. But I do wonder if the retail, I'm looking at Coinbase's retail portal, I mean, I'm earning 4% on USDC, 4% on Solana, 2% on Cardano. I mean, I get 4.5% over at Yoroi and 4.82% on Tezos, which blows my mind. I don't know why they're doing that. Polkadot's earning 9.77%, Cosmos 17%. That's worth looking at.
this is sorry. This is on Binance.us. Yeah.
No. This is Coinbase. But my point is, okay, this is all very appealing, but I don't even think Coinbase needs liquidity. I don't know what their incentive is for
I
offering
think
these returns. Go ahead.
I think the retail portal will disappear.
That was where I was headed. I think the retail
That's
I-
exactly.
I
We're all
think
on the
that's
same
what the
page.
case. I think that's where this whole case is to shut down their retail portal, and basically create
This is brilliant.
a legal precedent that essentially forces them to shut down the retail portal and go only to becoming an institutional clearinghouse, essentially.
I love that. If you have, there's like,
tweet that to capture it.
yeah, you need to I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about too. I was like, well, they're just going to use this Wells notice to basically say, sorry, we can't offer it to retail investors. Hey, we'll be back in 6 months. They're not going to be. You can use it as an exchange in the sense that you can bring on crypto from other places, but you can't basically USD on ramp, off ramp unless you have basically a company. You're an LLC or something, and you've paid for some of the prime services they have, and that's it. Because if I'm Coinbase, then you honestly cut your team probably more than in half because you're not worried about these mass market products and all of this flashy shit. And then
Your
you're
customer support team drops. Like you're dealing with
all of it, all
Yeah.
the product managers, it's gone. You just become the one-stop shop that's played well with the U.S. government, that does KYC, does AML. Brian Armstrong's very close with Capitol Hill at this point, who can talk the talk, walk the walk. And long term, if that happens, right, Aussie, I want to go one further. If that happens, Coinbase overnight could become the contractor for the U.S. government when the U.S. government decides to fill Fort Knox with digital gold.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
Yes. So
absolutely. No, there. I mean, when we talk about Coinbase's board, it's and it's all WEF. Like you're talking about. Yes, they got targeted a little bit by like by the SEC with this one Wells notice, but they've the SEC's essentially went to take down their competition for them.
That's right.
The SEC has, in some extent, just slapped them on the wrist. Like the SEC, in terms of what charges they brought against Coinbase, compared to what they went after Binance for, it's just it's night and day. And so, yeah, that Coinbase stock's at an all-time low, or was at an all-time low for the longest time. They want to boost up, like their partners at Vanguard and everywhere else want to boost that stock price.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I want to, and I didn't know this, but I have a book and I'm trying to become more technically savvy with Bitcoin because I just think I want to start playing more with the Lightning Network and bringing it into projects. And I didn't know that Coinbase was actually a technical term that had to do with Bitcoin. And so I'm going to now read you the definition. I don't have my book. It's in the other room, and I've already gone off camera once. But it says a Coinbase is a transaction is the first transaction in a block. It is a unique type of Bitcoin transaction that can be created by a miner. The miners use it to collect the block reward for their work, and any other transaction fees collected by the miner are also sent in this transaction. Point being, the Coinbase as a transaction, as an entity among the Bitcoin blockchain, is its own unique thing that has a relationship directly to the miners. That is exactly what it is turning into. And if you didn't know that, I think it's a really cool bit. I just thought they just said, oh, this is going to be the new base, right? Coinbase. But no, it's actually in when you look at how you get into the code of Bitcoin.
That is actually I mean, if Brian Armstrong had thought about this from like this whole master plan all the way,
I'm going to start believing. I'm going to start choosing just to believe he did.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's too many things. Too many things.
So not financial advice, but you may want to consider buying some Coinbase stocky stock.
Or said another way, I know I am.
The CDO is buying Coinbase stock, so
you know what
that means.
It's normally the chief degen officer, but I think it's the crypto development. The conspiracy development officer.
Yeah,
too. Just
100%. I'm trying to pull up my Coinbase and see what it's at right now.
It's at 90. I just looked.
It's at 90. Okay,
which is amazing. It was at 35 like 6 days ago or whatever. Like 6 months ago it was at 35.
So my dollar cost average on Coinbase is $54.
You're almost at a 2x.
Almost. Yeah.
Which is above average according to Tristan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? We were talking about his organization, Grant's organization system off mic before. I feel like Grant is just above average on everything.
But just above average.
Yeah. Sure, just above average.
Yeah, man. Okay, and then I was raising a question for us. Where did I put my OG question here? Let's go here. Okay, so we don't have time to totally unpack this, but this kind of leads me to I've been thinking a lot about this. We have been now on episode 79. We have done this for a minute, right? And we've even done this with different host groups. We had Big Daddy J here for a while, and now we've got the lovely Aussie. For the longest time, these conversations often evolve/devolve/morph into like what's going on with the stock, and it's low key, not really speculation on what the market's doing. Let's be real, or what NFTs are doing. My question is this: is there a way to establish intrinsic value on a crypto or a crypto company?
Can you say that another way? I don't know if I understand you.
So context for this is everyone knows Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett was the student of Benjamin Graham. Benjamin Graham wrote the book, The Intelligent Investor, and was the granddaddy of value investing.
Yes.
Is there intrinsic value? On the spectrum of value investing, on the far other side is speculative trading. And it always ends up gravitating that on the speculative end, it is trading. It's usually shorter term. Value investing is usually longer term, but they use different tools. Even technical analysis is chart analysis. That's speculative. Value investors read quarterlies, and they read basically the financial documents of a company. And so traditionally that's what it is, but the holy grail of some of this is there a way, can you do value investing with cryptos? I'm excluding Coinbase because Coinbase is a TradFi company.
So one of my earliest More Than Blockchain episodes is with a woman named Stephanie Jones, and we talk about value investing in crypto. And one of the things that kind of made me think from that, and I'm going to say here now, is when Graham, who taught Buffett, they didn't have the type of companies that we have now, just strictly due to the internet and the interconnectivity that we have. So I want to throw that out there because I think that things are now different. And a social network, like a social network's value, didn't exist when some of these like pretty time-tested principles came, where you're going to look at a P&L sheet and say, all right, what's the value of this company? Reed's law, for example, Metcalfe's law, all happened way after both of those two kind of rose to prominence. And they both talk about the value of a network being the sum or the square of nodes that can grow exponentially, right? This is like where cell phone services kind of, blew up, right? Because landlines need a lot of infrastructure and all of these things, but like cell phone services started to do that. The internet started to do that. I mean, right now we're in 3 different countries, and I think I think that's why people have always undervalued Facebook, and they still to this day are undervaluing Meta. There's still people, oh, Meta's not a good thing to buy. Well, they just dropped Threads. That's pretty good, and that's going to continue to grow, right? I listened to Grant's Monday show, which everyone should check out, the State of the Spark. It got to 100 million users. That's not a bad thing, right? It's going to actually help out the stock, right? So I guess what I would say is understanding, like, there's almost 2 different paradigms, the way that we're going to measure things between, like you're saying, the value investing and then the speculation, and then maybe something in crypto. Because if you look at something like Bitcoin, what you're basically trying to do is figure out, is there interest from miners based on the incentive to create Bitcoin by mining it and then sell it, obviously, with enough of a barrier in between that you have a profit margin. That's the whole game. If there wasn't an incentive because the network wasn't growing exponentially for miners, Bitcoin would die. It would die. It would shrivel up and die. So I guess what I'm saying is I think it's hard to answer that question knowing what we know now. This is like when I think it was Galileo was like, oh, the earth is round, right? And everyone thought he was crazy. So asking a question back then when we assume the earth is flat versus asking it now when we are literally about to be, or already kind of are, an interplanetary species, I think it's like a really tough thing to ask. So that's my non-answer to answer it. But just saying, I think the way that we understand value now is completely different. And that's still why many boomer investors don't understand social media. They don't see the power of it. They don't get the idea of an influencer. They can't wrap their head around the idea that if you have 1 million followers on Instagram, you probably don't have to work again, at least not in the traditional sense, like a 9 to 5 and wear a suit. So I think the way that we look at value is completely different. And this is why Charlie Munger, his brain breaks when he thinks about Bitcoin, and he just reverts to being a child and he calls it, a scam and all this stuff. Well, Larry Fink called Bitcoin a scam, and he said it was money laundering in 2017. And if you listen to the latest More Than Blockchain, or you're into crypto or Bitcoin, you know what's going on. He's literally just called it an international asset that's not tied to anything, that everyone can use to basically advance themselves and create a better tomorrow. So I think we're in an evolutionary state and understanding about what value is.
Yeah, I think at least using traditional metrics, there isn't a way of valuing cryptocurrencies or otherwise. I would say if you wanted to make one argument, and this is an argument of some data that I like to use when I look at cryptocurrencies and when I might argue a particular coin or chain is dead, is number of daily transactions, number of active developers through their Gitbook or GitHub, total value locked. Those are like, I'd say 3 kind of key metrics that you can kind of use to essentially evaluate whether a chain, and so this is only a cryptocurrency that is a chain. What the value is there. There's some other data that's a little bit harder to evaluate, whether it's a number of new projects being launched on the chain. So are you seeing a lot of new protocols being launched on the chain? Are you what's the total raise that we're seeing on some of these new protocols or NFT projects, depending on the chain?
You know, I mean, you raise a great point, and I think it's obvious that traditional metrics for a cryptocurrency specifically, traditional metrics will not apply. I do think it's funny that technical analysis applies, and I think technical analysis is kind of a misnomer because you're basically charting human sentiment, and that's why it does tend to parallel traditional finance, is because it's not really technical analysis, it's really trending analysis. But when you mention Reed's law and Metcalfe's law, you probably could quickly get into this. Like, you could ask yourself a question: is this a cryptocurrency? Yes. Is it also a chain? Or is it also a blockchain? It's like, well, yes. Okay, if it's a blockchain, how many nodes does it have? And now you can apply Reed's law as the size of a network, and if that network is being used. And so now you can start to add some sort of valuation on the strength of that blockchain. But then on the token side of it, now you've got Metcalfe's law, and Metcalfe's law was largely kind of like Reed's law, but it's more the social network side. And on the social network side, you could look at, like we've said in the past, number of GitHub developments. And so when you see the number of projects being actively dropped on, not old buckets, but buckets within the last quarter or month or whatever it is. And you could see, okay, how many new projects are being dev? These projects depend on it. And so you start to see a strength in a network. You could probably come up with a valuation formula, maybe not in the same way that you have value investing like Benjamin Graham, but it is a new world. And it's hard to look at delta and PE and assets and go, okay, well, they have a high rise in New York, so what's that worth? And it's like, okay, they have these many contracts, but you could pull over, if they're a blockchain, do they have contracts? Do they have revenue? Ethereum has like daily transactional revenue, but it doesn't have an entity. And so the very idea of doing value investing, I think, falls apart at the start because you don't have an entity. And not that that's a reason to not answer the question, because when you're looking at institutions, where you're looking at private equity that's going to be investing in this, you're basically saying private equity says we're going to go 7 to 10 years at this particular asset. And if Larry Fink comes along and says, we're calling Bitcoin an asset, let's just focus on Bitcoin for a second and say, what behind the room conversation happened where someone who's traditionally used to value investing a company drew parallels to Larry Fink and said, here is my new way in the new world of how we created a value assessment on Bitcoin that made Larry Fink go, okay, I don't mind having egg on my face now. This makes sense. And so just because it's difficult and different doesn't mean it's not valuable. And I would present for your consideration, if there were a Bitcoin spot ETF, there probably definitely sure as shit needs to be an Ethereum spot ETF. Not because it's better in the maxi sense of what Bitcoin is, but because when I start thinking about a valuation method, and the predictability of the future and all the projects that depend on Ethereum versus the projects that depend on Bitcoin. Did you guys see this? We need to follow up with this on a later show. We're over time, so I'll hard stop. But I'm going to drop the seed. Did you guys see the space Vitalik was on and his commentary about Bitcoin? And he was at once hesitant, but also encouraging to the Bitcoin community and saying, listen, you guys need to work on Lightning. You guys need to work on projects that depend on the network. Right now, you're all maxis on the currency. It will fall apart from that regard as we get closer and closer to institutions trying to value the future of the thing. Because you're right, Bitcoin has this gold currency use case, maybe a global world
Reserve currency.
thank you. A global reserve currency, maybe, but that's its only maybe. I want 100 different maybes, and that's what Ethereum offers is here's a maybe. Look at all the projects built on it. So it's the asphalt. It's the U.S. highway system. And it's like, okay, that's a strong use case. Ethereum as a currency? Not likely. But look at all the NFT projects that would implode if Ethereum just went away. How many of that do you actually have for Bitcoin? Maybe. Or
Yeah, I didn't hear that exact thing, but I did hear something that came out, and Maxie was talking about it, which was he was very, very complimentary of ordinals.
Yes.
Because he was like, that's something that creates a side ecosystem that pumps and keeps interest and keeps hash rate and keeps all of these things moving forward.
Yeah.
But we are way over time.
4 minutes. Come on.
way over
We're
time.
always 4 minutes over time. This is not anything
way over
new.
time.
Way over time. Yeah, buddy. This was encouraging. Or not encouraging. This was this was much deeper than I would have actually expected. This was a beefy show. And I really appreciate you guys going there with me. I appreciate Pseudo shout out. I appreciate George, Tristan, Brian Naughton, and George Pate rolling with us on this show because it took it a deeper direction than speculating on where the industry's going. And I appreciate that. I want to talk more about these beefier issues, so I appreciate that.
We've been talking beefy stuff a lot lately.
I'm not bitching. I'm just saying it was more so.
Aussie,
I'm not
we've
saying
only
we're
been talking
shallow.
Tofu. We've only been talking Beyond Meat. Grant needs like bison, raw bison. Everyone, we'll see you at Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. This is Not Crypto Bros. Thanks for joining.
Maybe Threads.
Maybe Threads.